Hello my dear friends, today I brought you a new part of this series. But there is a problem, and I need your help. As you already know the reason why I wasn't uploading new ups. I am feeling demotivated because of all the hassle I have had to face in the past 6 months. Because of that, there is a significant impact on my reach, which affects the channel, as well as the will to continue uploading new ups too. All I want from you guys is to like, comment and subscribe. Please try to write comments in the comments section. This will help me a lot. I am trying my best to upload new ups, but in return, I am receiving nothing. All I need is your support, that's it. So please help me. Now let's start our story. No matter how many times he knocked, there was no answer, so Hyle opened the door to Winter's office. He looked at the wall on the right and saw Winter sitting against it. He said, "How could you leave the little madam at the villa?" Only then did Winter sigh helplessly, then raised his head towards Hyle and asked, "You took her home, right?" Hyle replied, "Yes. By the way, she looked very sad." "Oh, shit." Winter straightened his head and leaned the back of his head against the wall. Hyle asked worriedly. Hyle continued, "Did you fight? Anyway, it's soon, so let's break up on good terms." Winter then muttered, "That damn princess, she said my parents don't love me enough. What does she know?" Because of the fight, Winter didn't come back to the mansion and stayed at his office. A day before their divorce, Violet still hopes to see him. Violet couldn't escape the guilt that she had hurt Winter by speaking carelessly to him. When Violet was lost in her thoughts, Lulu asked, "What happened to the madam?" Violet replied, "Anyway, tomorrow is the day I'm supposed to the divorce." Lulu then spoke, "Little madam, I'll prepare a big breakfast last for you, so you must eat it. I feel bad because you've been skipping meals a lot lately." Violet laughed and continued, "Thank you. I'll get hungry after going around, so I have to eat." Violet nodded. Lulu asked, "What you gonna do now, madam?" Violet then told her plan, and also about how she will leave the city and go far. Hearing this, Lulu then hesitated first. But then she told Violet what happened when she left the CEO last time. Lulu continued, "On the day my little lady left, that strong man fell on the road. He's falling down." Violet stopped in her tracks. Lulu's eyes widened as if she was surprised that Violet didn't know before. After the little lady left, he was so absorbed that he tried to go to the train station barefoot. When he found out that the little lady had left at the station, he was unconscious all day and then woke up. Even so, I guess he continued to wait at this house in case she would come back. He built this big garden to show my little lady, but he couldn't show it to you, so he must have been upset." When Violet remembered Winter's face at the moment he said that, she felt like crying. Violet took a deep breath and sounded determined, as if she had made up her mind. She knew that Winter is dependent on her for emotional support. Lulu then spoke, "You can't leave. I'm going to tell everyone at the mansion. Everyone will stop the little lady from going." Violet then smiled and spoke, "I'll look for it. How not to leave? So I'm going to talk to my husband." "Are you sure?" Violet nodded. They returned to the mansion and had breakfast prepared with special care by Turin. For the past few days, Winter has been sitting in his office chair, lacking the will and strength to die. This whole time Hyle was with him. Even Hyle was fed up from Winter longing for his parents' affection. Violet has already said this to him. So Hyle thought he should also take Violet's side and Winter should face the reality. Hyle also said exact same words what Violet told him last time. Winter's expression began to distort. He looked around to see if he wanted to throw something, but couldn't find anything. Everything felt terrible when he thought that the people he had believed to be his family until now were no different from him before he was 12, when he was exploited and missed by others. He thought that if they fed him properly and put him to sleep, that was love. If not, doesn't that mean he's never received or given love? Then the door to his office burst open. It was Winter's father, James Blooming. When he visited Winter, it was always with someone else. Winter asked, "Do you need something?" Or your friend was trying to start a business, so he asked if I could help him. James spoke, "No, not for that. No matter what your mother says, to me, you are my biological son." Winter asked, why not to my mother? James continued, of course your mother loves you, but honestly, there is a part of her that is reluctant to pass on the family name. Winter never really wanted it, but he wondered if he was so anxious about it. Or maybe his wife asked him to. While Winter's frown narrowed, James took a deep breath and spoke. So, let's try to convince your mother with me, Winter. Winter decided to use a method he often uses to confirm his suspicions. For some reason, it seemed like my mother had been fighting with my wife over titles a few days ago. It was just a matter of pretending to know the uncertain facts. Then James nodded. They said it was like that. My wife said harsh words out of anger. But she can't say things like that. Winter spoke in an adulterous tone, even though he didn't even know there had been a fight. Then James became thoughtful and asked, no way. Did Violet even tell you that? Winter continued, yes. My wife usually tells me everything right away. James replied, there are things I can't say. What did he say that made his father look so scared? Winter guessed what was going on between his mother and Violet. Even though he only trailed off, James jumped up and lost his temper. She is so determined to separate you from your mother. Winter, that is absolutely ridiculous. You are my biological son. How can I kick you out of the family? Of course, your mother's family could claim it, but it would have no effect. That's really what happened. Only then did Winter understand why his wife had said such mean things to him. He earns money, and his family considers him family. What was the reason for trying to break the fake family love that surrounded this mechanism? He thought there were threads of connection going all around, but when he pulled them all together, there was nothing at the end. While he was the only one pulling the thread and leading the way, the people he believed to be his parents lived by picking up the pieces he dropped. He had no interest in being broken. Violet, who had tried to pick up the piece and return it, threw it away with her own hand, and now she wasn't even interested in the piece. Winter's life has truly been a huge failure without any consideration. When Violet finished her breakfast, Lulu told her that the CEO went to the aircraft lab. Hearing this, Violet was eyes saddened. She wanted to meet him. Then to change the topic, Lulu spoke. Oh madam, did you see the article about aircraft? The word around town is that they'll have a manned test flight soon. Violet then spoke. Are there still those willing to pilot an airship despite the multiple fatalities? Perhaps it's because the research funds have increased significantly. I hear that they paid extra attention to the emergency exit system. Maybe that's why they were able to find someone to pilot the airship so quickly. Violet spoke, but still, it's such a dangerous thing to do. She thought, I wonder why that person decided to participate in such a dangerous journey. Perhaps they're willing to die if it means that a large sum of money would be provided to their family. After James left, Winter headed to the lab. There were dark clouds in the sky and it started to rain. He thought it was perfect weather for an airship to crash. Since he had to sign the divorce tomorrow anyway, he only had time today. He cannot divorce Violet. Divorce and bereavement were very different in Lackround. A divorced person may be able to request a quick remarriage, but this is not the case for a widowed person. He thought it was all over. When he thought that there would be no one in the world to mourn his death, he fell into deep despair. On the one hand, he was relieved to know that his parents would not be that sad even if he were no longer in this world. He doesn't know anything about Violet, because she was the one who talked to him about being her first love and all that. Winter honestly didn't take her words seriously. This was because, as a conservative woman, he thought that she was someone who could equate marriage with love. It was a good thing he didn't part with her smiling face at the end, Winter thought. He thought he should go out, but he couldn't move. Ah, the rain is coming down hard. Winter grumbled. Violet stood in front of Winter's office under Hyle's guidance and looked puzzled. Hyle, whose expression was more suspicious than hers, knocked on the door. CEO, the little madam is here. Can you at least answer me? There was no answer after several knocks, so Violet asked cautiously, he's not inside, is it? He continued, it can't be. The CEO's next schedule is here at the headquarters, so he will be inside. Hyle looked nervous and eventually just opened the door and went inside. Hyle, seeing that it was empty, made a blank expression. It would be right for you to be here. Now, just a moment, little madam. Hyle was very embarrassed. Then they both went to the director's office, and the director suddenly rushed out. Hyle asked urgently, "Is the CO here?" The director replied, "No." While the warden was speaking in a complaint, a loud noise was heard from a short distance away. Violet urged the warden with a look on her face as if she had heard a gunshot. What does that mean?" Then the warden became thoughtful and spoke. The director spoke, "It's the sound of airship motors." "Well, that can't be possible. The only people who can enter where the airship is are the CO and me." As soon as the warden finished speaking, Hyle started running west. As they left the building, they saw an airship rising as expected. The warden shouted in astonishment, "Getting on an airship in this weather is suicidal. Why on earth would you do something like that, CO?" Meanwhile, Winter Aircraft took off. He thought he was about to end his life, but why did he feel so peaceful and think he was free now? But whenever he closed his eyes, he only thought about Violet and how she was the only kind person to him. After thinking about it, he felt like he should leave a message to Violet. Winter picked up a pen and wrote, "Violet, I regret marrying you." He closed the notebook, set it aside, and leaned back in his chair. He was planning to write a full notebook just saying that he regretted marrying her and that his married life was terrible. Not a single terrible thing came to mind. If he wrote that he didn't like it for a useless reason, he felt like his insides would be seen through. Winter hated her when she shot herself in front of him. But other than that, he always liked the fact that she was his wife. "Actually, I didn't even want to see you off. It was just unfamiliar. He has never been seen off since he was born, and no one came out to meet him and wait for him. Receiving such favor was unbearably unfamiliar, and he was just uncomfortable because it was unfamiliar." As soon as she ran through the rain and arrived near where the airship was, Violet shouted on the mic, "Winter, what are you doing?" Winter clicked his tongue. If it was Violet who was sending this signal, there was nothing much to do. He can't possibly die where she sees him. Nevertheless, the emergency evacuation signal was repeated. It was going to be repeated 100 and 1,000 times. Winter looked at the signal. The other person did not stop and was sending signals to him to survive. He pulled the emergency escape lever at the same time the airship began to fall. When aircraft falls, Violet can't believe what happens. Everyone rushed out and was trying to find Winter. Hyle knew Violet's sincere love for Winter. He knew she was currently not stable, so he tried to take matters into his own hands to avoid any further problems. But Violet didn't stop. Then suddenly someone shouts, "I found it. The CO is here." Winter could faintly hear that voice. After a while, Violet was seen among the people running from afar. If it weren't for damn Violet Blooming's sincerity, he would have disappeared along with the airship. If only he hadn't let her sincerity make her presence known to him like fingerprints. If he hadn't still known about her. Sometimes Winter felt like Violet was spreading light around him. As she gets closer, his surroundings become brighter, and as she touches him, the death that seduced him moves away. "I'm alive," he thought casually. Even though he felt bad, he felt fortunate. Winter was immediately taken to a nearby hospital, and after a long surgery, he was moved back to the capital residence. The mansion's doctor checked the condition of Winter, who had not yet opened his eyes, and spoke to Violet, who was sitting next to the bed with a pious look. "The little master is so strong that I wonder if he is really human." "Is that so?" Violet muttered. The doctor continued, "Yes. If a weakling like me had crashed this hard, all my bones would have been broken and I would have to be bedridden for the rest of my life. Little master, if he uses a cane for a month and doesn't run for 3 months, he will be fine. I'm more worried about the little madam than him. Don't you have a high fever?" Violet nodded but remained frozen and did not move again. "Because she has a fever." The doctor told her to take a rest. But she refused. Winter on the bed was so injured that she didn't know what to do. The doctor told Violet to relax and left the bedroom. After a while, Hyle, who had finally gathered himself, came in and saw Violet hurriedly wiping away her tears with both hands. Hyle stopped, turned to the side, and said, "The CO just wrote something in a drawer in the office at headquarters. I found a will." When Violet looked back at Hyle, he continued speaking. Maybe, hey, just before the CEO went to board the airship, His Highness James came. Then what? Word got out that the CEO would be kicked out of the family. He's pessimistic about that. As Hyle spoke intermittently, she burst into tears and began to sob. Violet quietly turned her head and muttered as she looked at Winter again. What a bad person. You're right. Now you understand my feelings, right? I'm really going to beat you up. I'm going to resign. Violet, knowing that Hyle was shouting loudly in an attempt to somehow lighten the mood, smiled weakly. Hyle said, "Little madam, please go back to the bedroom." She continued, "I will sleep here today. He might wake up in the middle of the night and do something bad again." He continued, "And then you get really sick." She spoke, "Don't worry, I'll sleep like a real patient here." As Violet spoke soothingly, Hyle had no choice but to leave the bedroom. Only the two of them remained in Winter's bedroom. It was raining and still dark, but it was 7 a.m. Violet changed into her pajamas and lay down next to Winter, holding his hand tightly. Her heart was shattered, and she suddenly didn't know how to put it together. She was just dazed. It was Winter who opened his eyes first. The rain had stopped, and the sunlight on a cloudy day came through the closed curtains. Winter frowned when he found Violet asleep, holding his wrist tightly. "Why are you doing this here?" He pulled his wrist and Violet moaned and opened her eyes. And then she realized that Winter had woken up, so she quickly got up. "You're awake." What are you doing?" She continued, "How can you ask that?" Violet tried to smile, but her eyes were red from crying the night before, and her voice and breathing were trembling. Violet said quickly as she looked at Winter's splinted leg, "If you use a cane for a month and don't run for 3 months, you'll get better." He replied, "There is no such thing as hell." She continued, "It's a blessing to be self-employed." "Who says it rains like that?" Violet gasped, unable to continue speaking. She couldn't escape the fact that Winter had tried to take his own life the night before. Violet was heartbroken and pounded her chest with her fist. It seemed like people sometimes pound their chests with their fists when they were very sad, and it seemed like it was an attempt to somehow break the knot that had formed there. Violet grabbed Winter's hand with a worryingly pale hand, wondering if his pulse was functioning properly. "Let's talk." Then Winter looked back at her with cool eyes and asked, "Do I look like I'm in the mood to talk right now?" His voice was rough and low. Winter was doing everything to scare others, but Violet didn't even have time to feel fear. "You do. There is something I really want to say right now. Before we hand over divorce papers." He then shouts, "Get out, this story will end soon." As she urged, Winter grabbed Violet's hand holding his hand. "I don't want to see you, so get out." A dark fire lit in Winter's eyes. Gloom spread like poison throughout his body. Violet just thought that it wouldn't matter if she was suffocated by his gloom. She thought she was making up her mind about him, but she wasn't. It was absurd for her to say they would break up after spending time together. He spoke, then speak quickly. "Don't be selfish." Winter looked like he couldn't understand trying to talk to someone after almost dying and then surviving. Violet lowered her head and opened her mouth as if she didn't have the confidence to look at Winter. She continued, "I heard that you provided a place to escape to on an island called Oran, so it was harder to say more. Please understand." He spoke, "What are you talking about? Are you saying you won't leave?" She continued, "That's what I mean. I'm sorry for preparing it for you, but I can't run away. When I didn't know anything, I just left, but after trying it once, it was so hard." Violet continued, "Then there is only one way left." "No way." Winter's voice was heavy and rough as if it could crush anything. Violet nodded bitterly. She continued, "Yes. I expected you might not like it. You probably don't know how to do it anyway." Hearing this he was surprised. "What method?" "When you die, your body changes, but how does it work?" When Winter spoke in a voice that seemed to be boiling with anger at any moment, Violet tilted her head and belatedly asked with exclamation, "Did it sound like I was going to end my life?" He replied, "That's it. Because there is no other way." Winter was still untrustworthy. Winter grabbed Violet's chin and lifted her head. His beast-like eyes that would devour her entangled Violet. He continued, I knew it would be like this. Yeah, I got a little angry at you. But if it were you, wouldn't you be angry? Being told that my parents don't love me. Don't even dream. You can't die. Die, where are you? I will do whatever it takes to bring you back to life. Winter's hands tightened. He felt like he would never be happy after Violet died right before his eyes. It will continue to be like this. He will have to continue living like this as if there is a noose around his neck. He was afraid and it was terrible. As Winter was glaring at her as if he wanted to crush her, Violet's dry lips parted. Divorce. Let's postpone it. Winter was about to say something, but hearing this he stopped. She continued, I want you to call off the divorce, Winter. And then there was silence. Violet continued, today is May 20th. The meditation period is over. So, that was something I had to say first before I brought the divorce. It might sound like I'm changing words. I'm so sorry. Winter's hand fell to the bed. Violet continued, I think the only way no one will find fault with me if I don't marry into the Heston family is if we don't get divorced. Violet said that and waited for an answer, but Winter was completely dazed, as if he had never been so angry, and didn't even blink, looking like someone who had just woken up from sleep. Violet, who took his lack of response in a negative way, sighed, don't reject me right away, but think about it a little more. If you tell me your conditions, I will do as much as I can. He muttered, even tell me the conditions. She continued, is it so? Of course, you won't like it. But right now, I can't think of a better way. Instead, if you cancel the divorce this time, I will give you full authority to decide on the divorce thereafter. I promise, I will let you do it whenever you want. If you allow me to annul the divorce, I will sign a contract right away. Winter, are you listening to me? Violet waved her hand in front of him anxiously. Even as she was talking, Winter's expression changed dozens of times, especially when she told him she would give him full power to decide on a divorce, and it seemed like he took a breath and didn't let it out again. She quickly shook her head. Sorry, I was in a hurry. What does this mean, holding on to a sick person? Violet forced a smile as if nothing had happened. I decided to let you out if you told me, so I'll leave. Sleep more. When she tried to stand up, she felt dizzy and fell down. She wasn't as badly injured as Winter, but she was also in very bad shape because of the heavy rain and the heartburn she had had all night. Thanks to that, Winter finally came out of his daze, cupped Violet's forehead with his hand, and his expression hardened. He asked, what did the doctor do? Why do you have such a strong fever? She replied, it's just a cold. He continued, where's the simple cold? The disease that kills the most children in Rockround is cold. Because you are not a child. This is the age when you are at your healthiest. Violet was already exhausted, and after talking to Winter about her strength, she was completely exhausted. Winter was the complete opposite. He thought he didn't have the strength to die, and suddenly a surge of strength surged through his stretched body. It was a pity that his leg was injured. When Violet's head tried to tilt down as she spoke, Winter cursed and pulled her head into his arms. She spoke, I don't know which of us is in critical condition. She muttered, I am not a patient. He continued, we're in big trouble. You must be talking nonsense because your fever is so severe. In the meantime, Violet felt some hope as she watched Winter pull her into his arms, wondering if his head would bend. She asked softly, would you consider it? You mean divorce? Yes, divorce. He continued, do as you will. Instead, if you cancel this time, as you said, you will never bring up the topic of divorce again. It's a waste of time to talk about this and that. Don't you need more time to think? He continued, I do not need it. Violet smiled faintly at his annoyed response. Well, you value time. She said, raising her head and looking at Winter. Let's do it, turn it into a surplus. He continued, I don't understand exactly yet, but now I know that's not what women like. Violet nodded slightly. It may be a very selfish thought, but if he becomes separated from his parents, many of the reasons why Violet decided to get a divorce will actually disappear. So, she decided to give up on pushing him out of her mind. Then she dozed off. And Winter was happy. Violet was so deeply asleep that she didn't wake up even as Winter slowly pulled his hand away. Winter found his wand again, took a deep breath, and stood up. After cursing himself for stupidity as the pain throbbed through his head, he left the bedroom and quickly looked for Hyle. Hyle was full of dissatisfaction and approached Winter to say something, but when he saw Winter's complexion suddenly change, he immediately asked, "Did something good happen?" Winter asks, "Bring me coffee and painkillers. Both are toxic and..." Hyle continued, "Of course, the director and researchers kept quiet. The CEO got hurt because he fell down the stairs after drinking. That's not it." Winter couldn't believe what he was saying with his own mouth. So he paused for a moment and spoke softly, "She doesn't want to remarry Heston, Violet. She asked me to cancel my divorce as a solution." Hyle's eyes widened at those words. Winter seemed to realize it only after saying it with his own mouth. For a moment, Winter forgot about the pain and smiled. Hyle, who was looking at him blankly, belatedly understood and jumped up with excitement. "That's incredibly good news." Winter continued, "What? Yeah, honestly that's good news. It won't matter if we proceed with the Heston family title like this. The thought of seeing those damn Ash Lawrence and Heston get stabbed in the back already makes me dizzy." "Oh, no problem," Hyle responded appropriately and cheered inwardly. Hyle was excited, but then quickly became serious and spoke to him. "CEO, this is not the time to relax. I'm sorry to say this, but you and your wife both harmed each other once. There's no guarantee it won't happen twice." Then Winter looked at Hyle with an expression of disbelief. "What's going on? You only choose words that are useful today. You don't bring what I need." Hyle continued, "Oh, coffee and painkillers. I'll bring it. And Mr. CEO, in case the little madam changes her mind, can't you let all the employees know in advance? Were you always this smart?" Winter was genuinely surprised and beckoned the door to tell him to go quickly and spread the word. He continued, "Go and tell them. Instead, since Violet is sleeping, if you make a loud noise, you will be fired. No need to worry at all." After Hyle said that, he got excited and ran down the hallway. After a while, brief squealing sounds were heard here and there. And then Hyle rushed to Lulu to retrieve his resignation letter, which he had left behind just in case. Everyone was so excited about the news that she wouldn't leave. Winter muttered, raising one corner of his mouth, "Even if I try not to call it that. She is a princess loved by everyone." Violet slept for a really long time. She woke up briefly in the middle of the night, but after that, she fell back asleep and slept until the next morning. Violet opened her eyes, then widened in the pouring sunlight, and raised her upper body. As she looked around, the bedroom door opened and Winter, who had gotten used to his cane after a day, walked in, frowning at his still pain. He spoke, "You're a terrible sleeper. You slept for 16 hours. Hearing this she can't believe, she muttered, Me. It seemed like she couldn't believe it either. For some reason, she slept so much that her back hurt. He continued, "I was waiting for you to wake up so I could write a contract about canceling the divorce, but..." She inquired, "Did I sleep that long?" "Really?" He then spoke, "Stop talking in your sleep and get up. Let's go write a contract." She then spoke, "Oh, I'll at least wash my face and come back. I'm embarrassed because I slept too much." Violet's cheeks were red as if she was truly embarrassed. She said with a look in her eyes that seemed pitiful about where Winter was, "Yes, whether you wait 16 or 17 hours, that is it, my princess. Don't be too embarrassed." She blinked and quickly went into the room. Violet quickly started dressing up before that impatient man attacked her. They both then sat down together for an agreement. Winter then spoke, "Since I agreed to stay married, let's agree on the terms." She sat and replied, "Great. Tell me." He continued, "First, from now on, you have to go to all the parties I want to go to." Violet nodded at his words, and said, "It seems like it's helpful for business." Of course, that wasn't the reason at all. However, Winter just wanted to solidify that Violet was his wife by going to parties around the neighborhood. Violet asked, "What about the second?" He continued, "This is really important. I hope you don't leave any broccoli behind in the future. I like vegetables, so it's sad to see them being left behind. Violet flinched at his words. Violet, who was speechless, asked cautiously, if you don't want me to leave broccoli behind, how about taking it out of your meal? He continued, didn't you understand me? That I like it. You eat it too because I like it. Winter gestured at the paper as if telling her to write quickly instead of resisting. Violet sighed deeply and asked without realizing it, what about the third? He continued, only two. She was surprised, really? Anything else? Even if you don't come home, don't ask when I'll be coming. It's not something like that to be written down in a contract. Just a little broccoli, he continued, isn't it up to me to set the conditions? Why are you questioning me like this? As Winter furrowed his eyebrows and spoke, Violet wrote down the second condition with a somewhat sullen look on her face. Don't leave any broccoli behind. After writing that down, Violet looked at the contract, which looked scanty and unimportant no matter how she looked at it. There's nothing special. He continued, I didn't even want a divorce in the first place. You said you didn't want to live with me. He spoke like a sulky child, and Violet spoke as if she didn't understand. She continued, I thought since you suggested a consideration period first, of course, you would want it too. He then replied, so, why do I hold on to someone who doesn't want to live with me? She then muttered, I see. There was a little miscommunication. Wait a minute, hold on, dear viewers, what does that mean by little miscommunication, dear princess? We are now at chapter 85, Little Miscommunication. If this is little, then what is big? Anyway, well, let's go back to narration. Then Violet picked up the contract, checked it, and asked him. Then I don't have to agree to your conditions. It's too late because the contract has already been signed. Don't leave any broccoli behind. Of course, eat other vegetables if possible. You're an adult. In the end, the contract ended with a story about broccoli. Winter immediately handed over the contract to the lawyer brought by Hyle. Winter said, unable to hide his joy. If we show up together at the title succession ceremony next month, it'll be worth seeing. Ash Lawrence's expression. Violet was relieved. Because the expression looked happy. Winter couldn't let go of his impatient nature and came and sat down on the chair at his usual speed, clicking his cane. Then he pounded his fist on the table, waiting for his pain to subside. It hurts a lot. When Violet tried to put her hand on his thigh out of concern, Winter hurriedly grabbed her wrist and lifted it up. Please don't touch me at any time. She replied, I pity you for being sick. He continued, better hit me. That would be less painful. Violet looked upset and said another word as if she didn't understand. You really don't like me touching you. He continued, it's selfish. You touched me even though I didn't let you touch me. I heard that's how you normally have a marital relationship. She continued, stop arguing. I can touch it, you can't. Is it okay? He muttered, oh my, what is this, you selfish bastard. Winter sarcastically looked at the wide-eyed Violet. However, when Violet frowned as if telling him not to do it, she immediately pretended to cover her mouth with her hand. Looking at the prank, it seemed like he wasn't in a very bad mood. Winter slapped her hand like he would a friend and made a frustrated expression. It's so uncomfortable, it's driving me crazy. How long do I have to use a cane? I'm not even an old man. I want to go out. I want to work. I will turn away. She replied, you can't even blame others. He continued, why can't I do it? It's my parents' fault. Shit. As Winter grumbled, Violet spoke to him as if she had decided, I will never let something like that happen again. You, by what means? When Winter asked, Violet placed her hands on the table and spoke in a strong tone. I have decided something. What? He inquired. She continued, I will be good to you. Why? He inquired. She continued, I've been meaning to do that since I first told you about your parents. To be nice to you. I decided to let people know that relationships between people can be built without money. You know I'm a conservative person. I feel responsible for you. Of course, in today's world, I could be wrong and you could be right. Or maybe you and I are just different. But I want you to believe what I believe. As Violet spoke carefully, Winter nodded. And then he opened his mouth. It's up to you. I want you to believe what I believe. What is the importance of money? Winter, who was trying to make a joke, was left speechless by Violet's obvious answer. She continued, all right then. I'll send a telegraph to the Hestons. I plan to visit their mansion tomorrow. He asks, why are you telling me this now? I'll go with you tomorrow. She replied, well, you're not allowed to go out for 2 weeks. With a surprised look, he muttered, what? She continued, they say you're not allowed to go out. The doctor told you not to go out. Winter raised an eyebrow at the absurd punishment he had heard for the first time in his life. I'm going out. No, she replied. He then asked, what are you going to do if I leave? She spoke, I will stop you. He continued, are you confining me? Violet nodded slightly and looked at him with the eyes of a stern tutor. She continued, that's the way it is. The doctor said it was best to not work for a month. Plus, you have a short temper and move around quickly even when you're injured. Then it won't get better. He was pissed off and spoke, no, but I'm 29 now. I am grounded at this age. Does it make sense to ban going out? Winter's bewildered expression was a sight to behold. Winter frowned and continued, until when? She continued, 2 majors. If you look good even before then, I will allow it. I'll be leaving in 2 weeks. Violet looked puzzled at his answer. She had no idea that workaholic would accept it so obediently. He thought for some reason he wasn't annoyed by Violet's nagging. Violet asked, holding his hand to see if he would wake up, would you like some tea? He continued, let's go and have tea at your house. I wanted to show you, but we fought so I couldn't. With surprising looks, she muttered, my house. Yes, your house, Winter said and stood up. Then they both went to the garden. In the garden, as Winter already said, he will bring Violet's house in the garden. Seeing the house there, she was surprised. How much technology was advanced. She knew he must have spent a large sum of money on transportation. He spoke, as you already know, in this house, I can sleep easily without any problem. When she entered the house, the smell of the sea and all the memories flashed back in front of her. While all the servants were arranging the table, Winter told her, there was an incident. She asks what? He told her that surprisingly, when you were not around me, the staff doesn't want to work for me and but now you are back, everyone is also back. She then spoke, maybe you paid them more than enough so that they can make their own decision, like a real human. As always, Violet's words speak volumes. Winter was mesmerized by her. He then said, it's a pity that you are against the royal authority. I think it would be nice if you were king. She then sarcastically spoke, because I'm weak in math. The economy will be at risk. I will help you, Winter said jokingly, and Violet answered seriously, the national treasury must be strong. No one knows how to become rich better than you. Then, Winter smiled slightly. Violet looked out the window and opened her mouth again. Sharon wanted to be in the Navy. But there is only one person in the Duchy of Das who can never become a naval officer. Do you know who that is? Who? He asks. She continued, the first successor must join the Navy, but the second successor can never join the Navy. He spoke, oh, I see. The sea is dangerous, so if the first heir dies at sea, the second heir must take over. Violet nodded, so when I was young, whenever Sharon saw naval conquests, she would cling to me and cry, saying, why can't I become a Navy? Well, I always comforted Sharon, but I was really jealous of that kid who cried for that reason. Why? He asked. She continued, anyway, she is being considered as the successor to the principality. Yes, the reason the lady can't join the Navy is not because of the young master. Violet nodded. She said, looking at Winter again. Yes, now that our matter is settled, I think I'll visit the Heston family tomorrow. I'm going to post a message today. He said, let's go together. She continued, I told you. You are not allowed to go out. He was annoyed. Shit. So you're telling me to send you alone to meet the guy who tried to marry my wife? It seems like you finally understand the meaning of no going out. Violet spoke teasingly and laughed like a child. Winter's temper, which was about to boil over at the laughter, calmed down like a bubble. Seeing him happy, she thought, it'd be nice if he'd laugh more often. The same day, at the Heston mansion, the announcement that Winter and Violet aren't divorcing reached to them too. Carson Heston, the next head of the Hestons, was furious, because this was different from what Ash said. The butler told him, Madam Violet has said that she will pay you a visit tomorrow. Perhaps you can discuss with her then. Then suddenly a voice came, that won't be necessary. We must not disrespect her anymore. We've never once directly discussed the matter with the madam herself. Giannis Heston, eldest son of Carson Heston. Hence, it was an act of carelessness on our part. I shall pay her a visit, father. The story ends here, my dear friends. I wanna ask you guys, if you all really want the next part, then please do like, comment and subscribe. Otherwise, my work will go in vain. As I have already told you, at the beginning of the video, the reason. I really need your support. Type, Winter and Violet. For the next part. Till then, bye.